Hey, this is Victor Antonio, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Sales, where you and I just have a sales conversation without the fluff, without the hype, without all that. Let's just, you and I, have a conversation. So today I want to talk about, your presentations, but more specifically, how do we persuade and influence people to buy into our product? And so one of the things we're taught, and, we're taught influence, we're taught persuasion, we're taught closing techniques, we're taught overcoming objections. And all of these things have their place in the process of selling when appropriate. But one of the questions we should ask ourselves, when we're trying to sell somebody is, why haven't they made that decision to buy in the past from somebody else, right? Or just simply, why haven't they made that decision? It's a good question, isn't it? Because think about it. You're talking to the customer. They probably know they have a problem, but why haven't they made that decision? Let's analyze this, and that's what I want to talk to you about today. I want to talk about, why don't they change, and how do we get them to change? And I think you're going to find this very beneficial. So again, let's do this. Let's talk about, the three types of customers you're going to run into. Three types of customers. I want you to write this down if you're sitting in front of something. Just write it down. If you're driving, just listen. Maybe you can listen to it again and write it down later. But the first type of client you're talking to, and let's set up a context here. Let's say that you're selling an enterprise-level CRM, customer relationship management software platform, right? A CRM system. So customers and companies can companies can actually manage their database, all their customers. And that's your product. Now, when you're talking to a customer, maybe you run across a customer who's unaware, which is kind of incredible that they don't know CRM is available, but just kind of work with me on this. But let's say they're unaware of your product or service that you offer, because maybe you do offer a product or service that is unique, but you offer a product and they're unaware. So let's call that type 1. Type 1 type of client is someone who isn't aware of your product or service and goes, I don't know, what is that? Or isn't aware of how it might help them. That means we have to now educate this client. Type 2. This is the customer who is aware of your product or service, but they don't care. You know what I mean? They just simply don't care. It's not urgent. I know you've seen this customer before. Yes, I know I need it, Victor, but, not right now. Maybe next quarter. We'll take a look at it, next year, but right now we don't have the time. So in other words, they're aware that a solution exists, but they simply don't care. They don't care enough to actually want to make the decision to make a decision. In other words, move forward and buy something new or something better. And so our job when we have this type of customer that is aware but doesn't care is that we have to create, and you've heard this many times, especially on my podcast, you have to create a sense of urgency. You have to demonstrate where they're losing. Show them how they're losing revenue. Show them how it's driving up their costs, or maybe how their market share is shrinking because they simply don't understand what it's really costing them. So they're aware, but they don't care. Our job is to make them care. And I think if I were to split these numbers up, 10% of the people will be unaware of what you have to offer. Another 30% will be aware of what you have to offer. They simply don't care. They simply don't care. Now, the third type, type 3, these are people who are aware, they care, but they're scared. Now, this is important because 60% of the people lie here. In other words, 60% of the people, they're aware of what you have to offer. They care. They understand there's a sense of urgency. So logic would dictate, right? If you know that you need it and it's urgent, then why don't they act? It's because they're scared. And our job is to make them less afraid of change, because everybody's afraid of change. And the bigger the solution, the more complex the solution, obviously the more possibilities of things going wrong, that creates more imagined fear. You know that part that you start thinking about all the things that could go wrong, but you focus less on all the things that could go right and benefit you in the long run. It's just the way the brain works. We focus more on the negative than the positive. And our job is to take that negative thinking, that imagined fear that the customer has, and try to assuage their concerns. Now, how do we do that? So, let's do a quick summary here. Tier 1, people who are unaware. That's typically 10% of the population, your buying population. Tier 2, people who are aware, but they don't care. They don't see a sense of urgency. That's 30% of the population, buying population. And the last tier, tier 3, these are people who care, and they're aware, they care, but they're scared. So our job is to reduce that fear. So how do we do that? In the sales process, in the sales presentation, to be more specific, this is where we really have to take time to really reduce that fear. See, too often we're talking about features, we're talking about benefits, advantage, gain, we're talking about the value proposition, differentiation, all these wonderful things, why we're better than the competitor, the matrix, the comparative matrix of why we're better, the solutions we have, how great our company is, all the support we have. But at the end of the day, they're already aware that you have that. Their problem is that they're afraid. So part of your presentation, I want you to think about this for a second. Part of your presentation is that you have to spend some time assuaging their concerns, reducing their fear, especially their imagined fear. And you don't see this a lot in sales presentations. You don't see the reducing of concern within a presentation. Said another way, customers, you can go through the whole presentation, feature, benefit, advantage, gain, value proposition, differentiation, why you're better, and the customer is still afraid. Our job then is within that presentation is to show the customer that they shouldn't be afraid. Well, how do you do that? Well, let's categorize them again. So again, we're talking to a specific customer, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, right? They're unaware. Number 2, they're aware, they just don't care. Number 3 is they're aware, they care, but they're scared. Let's assume we're talking to that 60% right now. In your presentation, you have to realize what the customer's situation is. Everything is context-based in selling, right? You got to understand the context. So there's 3 scenarios with a given company. In this case, we're selling a CRM system. So there's 3 possible scenarios of what I'm dealing with. The first scenario is that they don't have a CRM. And, they're doing it manually somehow, but they don't have a CRM. So selling them nothing to go to something might be a hard sell because, first of all, you have to sell them on why they need it, right? Create that need, that awareness. And then you have to sell them on the urgency, make them care, and then get over the hump so they don't get scared, right? Make it easy. The second type that you might have is somebody who has a do-it-yourself. Maybe they develop their own in-house database, or maybe, believe it or not, they use an Excel spreadsheet. And believe it or not, I've seen companies still today, still using Excel spreadsheets to manage their customers. So now they know, they're aware that they need to actually, track their customers. They're aware, they just don't care. So now we have to create a sense of urgency to get them to move over to a CRM. But again, there's still going to be that fear of not wanting to move over. But let's take the third category. The third category is that they have a CRM system, which means they're aware and they care about their data. The problem is they're afraid to move over. You've convinced them in your presentation that you're better than the competition, you have more features, benefits, all that's wonderful, and they see the difference, but they're still scared. So during the presentation, somewhere in your presentation, especially towards the end of your feature, product, advantage, gain, product demonstration, or after a demo, when we talk about implementation, that's when you have to kick into high gear. That's when you have to calm this part of the brain down. The amygdala, the reptilian brain, that part of the brain that alarms when people are scared. Well, when a company is scared, you have to understand why they're scared. So let's pause for a moment. I'm talking to a customer, and let's say this customer has an existing CRM system. I need them to move over. Let me ask you a question. What are they concerned about? What are they concerned about? Because they're not concerned about the feature, benefit, advantage, gain. You've already explained that away. You've already explained your value proposition. They bought into that. They see your company as a fit. They see it has integrity and it has longevity. That's not a problem. They see you've worked with many other companies similar to theirs. So credibility is not a problem. So once you're past all that, what's the real issue? They're afraid. What are they afraid of? Here's where I want you to ask yourself the deeper questions. This is where the real salespeople sell. What are the deeper issues? Put yourself in their position. If you had, let's say, 50 salespeople on the CRM system right now, running on the CRM system, entering data, what would be your concerns as a VP of sales, for example, of this company? What would be your concern? If you're in operations or CTO, what would be your concerns? Well, first, I would be concerned about interruption of work, right? So wait a minute, if we move over from this database to that database, this CRM to that CRM, what's that going to take? What's the effort look like? So now we have to talk about time, money, and effort. But also we have to talk about compatibility, integrability, operations-wise. Will that interfere with anything? How about porting the data over? Data integrity. Oh, we need to talk about that. Because if I move the data over, how do I know it's going to map perfectly with this existing database, my CRM, the new CRM? How do we check that? And by the way, what's the time frame? What's the rollout? What type of interruptions will it cause? Do we have to retrain our salespeople? By the way, we have an app on our phones. Do they have to change the apps on their phone? If they do, will the data port over to the apps? And how will the connectivity piece work? Blah, blah, so forth and so on. See, that's the real conversation they want to have with you, because you're asking them to make a big decision. And see, as soon as you begin to understand them, who they are, what they're going through, they're more likely to listen to you. Look, if you want a customer to trust you, because at the end of the day, that's what we're building. We've proven that our product is great. We've proven that we can deliver. At the end of the day is, do I trust you? And here's what customers want from you. Simply two things. One is you understand their point of view. You understand all the little things they're dealing with. All those subtleties I just mentioned, bringing the data over, right? Working with operations, retraining in terms of the systems. What will we have to update or upgrade? Whatever it may be, that's what they're really concerned about. They want to know that you understand that. Because if you understand that, then they'll listen to you. Now, to get full trust is you have to understand them, plus they have to know that you, listen carefully, that you have their best interest in mind. This is important. Don't just go, yeah, I've heard that before. No, this is good. This is really solid here if you listen to it. Empathize with them. Truly understand what they're going through. Like, for example, the VP of sales may be afraid to port things over because it may interrupt some sales. And guess what? Maybe that VP is hanging on by a string in terms of losing his job. And if he decides to switch over, he's taking full responsibility. So that's a concern. See, these are the subtle things that you, as a salesperson, have to talk to about with your clients. In other words, have that conversation, that real deep conversation. Really understand how they're thinking, what they're going through, right? Next, this is the plus sign again. You got to have their best interests in mind. You have to have their best interests in mind, and they have to sense that. That's the important thing. You can say, yeah, I have their best interests in mind, but do they sense it? When I say have their best interests in mind, it's one of those things, would you recommend this to your own mother type of thing? They want to know that, one, you're not looking to just get a sale. You're really trying to help them. And you also understand that if it doesn't work out, that's not good for them, and you really take that seriously. They want to know that you have their best interests in mind. In other words, if I understand the customer, really understand at a deep level, and I have their best interests in mind, bam, that's when we have trust. And that's what sells deals today. Look, the majority of deals go to no decision. Nobody buys into them. Why? Because all of a sudden, nobody's what? Trusting anybody. Everybody knows that the features are there, the benefits are there, all these things are there, but they don't understand or trust that you can deliver that for them. So keep this in mind. When you're talking to a customer, figure out, first of all, which type is it? Are they unaware? Are they aware but don't care? Or type 3, maybe they're aware, they care, but they're scared. And if they're scared, your job is to provide a blueprint. A blueprint says, here's how it works out. Here's how we're going to roll this program out. Here's how you're going to implement it. And here's how we're going to do this for you. We've worked with companies like this in the past. Here's what's going to happen. Here's how it's going to execute. Step 1, step 2, step 3. Make them feel good by giving them that blueprint, those milestones, and let them know that you've done this so much that they can trust you. You do that, and guess what? They're going to look at you differently. They're going to say, this person understands us, they understand the map, the blueprint, and they understand how the rollout should happen. But more importantly, if they understand, I'm going to repeat myself again, if they know you understand them, and if they also know that you have their best interests in mind, they will feel like you're the right person for them. Anyway, that's it for this Let's Talk Sales. Leave me some feedback on this conversation. It's an interesting one because most salespeople don't take time to talk about, what's the blueprint? What's the roadmap? What's the rollout? And that's what I want you to begin to implement in your presentation, especially the bigger, the more complex the deal, the more assuaging you'll have to do. So again, leave me some feedback. And as always, thank you for listening. This is Victor Antonio, always reminding you, selling ain't hard when you know how. Take care. Hi, I'm Victor Antonio. I'm an author, sales trainer, and keynote speaker. I'm often asked, what makes a great speaker? Is it someone who delivers real content that the audience can use? Is it someone who engages the audience so they're part of the learning experience? Or is it someone who can motivate an audience to push them beyond their comfort zone and discover new abilities?
The answer is yes. But the most important thing to remember is that I'm not there to look good. I'm there to make my client look good. Simply put, it's never about me, and it's always about them.